Tired of leaving Goodwill empty-handed or frustrated by the rising prices on what little vintage you do find? You are not alone. As you may have seen on my recent video, I'll link it up here, documenting my Michigan to Florida trip, stopping at 14 Goodwills in 7 states. Most of the time, I left those Goodwills frustrated and empty-handed. But the good news is there are other thrift and antique stores offering real vintage at much lower prices. And that means better margins and more unique inventory for your Etsy shop. Join me as we explore exciting new sourcing spots that I found in Brandon, Florida last week. I spent just $89 in one day, and every single piece tells a story. Let's see how that $89 could turn into $420. Hi, I'm Carol. I sell vintage full-time on Etsy and share what I've learned here on YouTube to help other sellers like you find success. My shop focuses on timeless pieces, vintage glassware, metals, and collectibles. And I treat sourcing trips like this one as both treasure hunts and business days. Whether you're brand new to vintage reselling or just ready to move beyond those empty Goodwill shelves, I hope this video gives you some new ideas and maybe a little encouragement for where to find your next profitable vintage pieces. I started my day at the Brandon Goodwill, where I have found much success in the past, but that day I walked out empty-handed. Prices were up and quality of what was even available on their shelves was down, and it didn't even feel worth my time to have stopped there. But instead of heading home, I decided to make a detour and see what else Brandon had to offer. I know a lot of resellers skip antique stores because the price tags can look a little higher than Goodwill. But here's the thing. I don't buy by sticker price. I buy for the margin. That means I'm looking at what I can realistically sell the piece for after cleaning it, photographing it, and listing it. For example, I paid about $38 here, but the items I brought home, the wedding cake topper, the brass goblets, the silver bowl, and the little owl tree are now listed for over $100 combined. And you are going to be blown away when you see how clean and shiny my husband got those brass goblets in that little silver bowl. I've mentioned in other videos that Salvation Army stores are very good for vintage here in Florida. Often they have true vintage pieces at prices much lower than what Goodwill is currently charging for similar items. Now, when I go to the Salvation Army store, I don't expect to fill a cart. I'm perfectly happy to walk out with one or two quality finds that I can list for a solid profit. I'd rather have a few great sellers than a cart full of mediocre pieces that sit in my shop for months. Brandon's Salvation Army did not disappoint that day. The first thing, though admittedly the only thing that caught my eye, was a shelf arranged in shades of purple, my favorite color. And right in the middle of it was something I recognized immediately. That strawberry pattern told me it was Fenton. When sourcing, know your instant yes items. Mine are hand-blown glass, metal, anything with craftsmanship. This beautiful 10-inch amethyst swung vase was only $6.99, an absolute steal for such a distinctive piece in such a desirable color. It's already clean, styled, and listed in my shop. Next, I headed to a smaller thrift store I'd never visited before, and it turned out to be full of hidden treasures. When I first walked into Life's Treasures thrift store, I honestly wasn't sure what to expect. The vintage pieces they had displayed near the front were beautiful, but the prices made me wonder if this might be one of those little shops where everything's marked like a boutique. But I knew that faith-based thrift stores often price to sell, not to compete. Then I made my way toward the back to the housewares section, and that's where the real treasure hunt began. On those shelves, I found several tried and true items that will always sell well in my shop, especially anniversary themed pieces. And here's the best part. Remember that stray silver plate serving dish lid I found in Greenville, South Carolina on my way down to Florida? Well, I found its mate, the dish itself, right there at Life's Treasures. I knew I'd come across one eventually, but I didn't think it would happen this soon. This is definitely a store I'll be returning to again and again. I found so many really nice anniversary items here at this thrift store, and they were so reasonably priced that I was able to get several pieces in one spot. And the best thing was, there are a couple of pieces coming up here that are actually items I already had in my store, that all I had to was, for instance, add one more to the quantity of this plate and listed. And this is a set of champagne flutes that had recently sold out in my store. All I had to do was renew the listing. I love it when I don't have to start listings from scratch. My last stop of the day was at Lighthouse Ministries thrift store in Brandon, and honestly, I had high hopes for this one. I wasn't disappointed either. I've been to several of their locations, and this store in Brandon has always been the best of the bunch when it comes to vintage hard goods. The one in my own community tends to focus more on clothing, but this Brandon store consistently surprises me. Last winter, I found a large pair of brass birds here that sold quickly and brought in an excellent profit. So I was curious to see what I'd uncover this time. That lone champagne flute there, I'm adding to my collection of lone champagne flutes, hoping to match them up someday or sell them as a mismatched set. But the other champagne glasses, the votive cups, and the butter dish, those were all items sold out or currently for sale in my shop. And voila, it was so easy to do the listings for these because all I had to do was add quantities or renew. When I added up the totals that evening, this trip was even better than I had realized in the moment. I spent a total of $89.19 that day, and the items I sourced are now listed for about $420 of potential revenue in my shop. Every single piece came from those smaller thrift and antique stores, not one from Goodwill. That's the lesson I hope this video leaves you with. Sometimes it's not about finding more thrift stores, it's about finding the right ones. And the truth is, Goodwill isn't the only option out there. Stores like Lighthouse Ministries, Salvation Army, Life's Treasures, and even antique stores like Sweet Memories all have their own rhythm and character. And when you get to know them, they can become some of your most reliable sourcing spots. So the next time your favorite Goodwill shelves come up empty, take it as an invitation to explore a little further. You might just find your next bestseller in a few new favorite shops waiting right around the corner. If this video gave you some new ideas, I'd love to hear where you've been finding your best vintage lately. Share your favorite off-the-radar sourcing spots in the comments below. You might just inspire someone else's great find. If you haven't already, please subscribe. If you felt like this video was worthwhile, give it a like, maybe a share. I appreciate you all so much. Now, I want to show you what sold in my shop this week. For this week's What Sold feature, I wanted to share this lovely vintage hand mirror, one of those pieces I know will sell eventually to the exact right buyer, so I'm always willing to take a chance on it. I sourced it for $6.73 and sold it for $42, giving me a gross profit of just over $35 and a return on investment of more than 500%. It's a heavy, high quality mirror, probably from the 1940s, with that graceful gold detailing that instantly elevates any vanity. The mirror itself had a small scratch, but it was remarkably clear for its age. What I love about these mirrors is that they often end up in the hands of hairstylists who use them as fun client mirrors when showing off new hairstyles. I've sold a few for that exact purpose, and I like to imagine that this one is getting that second life in a beautiful salon somewhere. Pieces like this remind me of why I love selling vintage. Every item has a story, and sometimes that story just keeps going.